invariably these are all called green fuels. But it's not. And this is always the case. Whenever you want to unravel something, follow the money.
Yeah.
It always leads you to why something is happening.
Correct.
And the real reason we're pushing for all of this is just exactly that, money.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to send money outside of the country for
Correct.
fuel when we can get it in the country itself.
Correct.
Which is why the push to ethanol, because like with the US, and this is an interesting parallel, because in the US, they are pushing corn to make ethanol.
Yeah.
And they are also realizing that it's not really worked out well for them.
No.
It's turned out to be a little bit of a... there's a very nice video, you should check it out, from Engineering Explained. Jason does a fantastic job of breaking down the science and the calculations. And he's gone through a couple of studies, and he's spoken about ethanol and its impact on the US. So they said that any alternative fuel should have a 20% reduction in environmental impact. It turns out now the studies are showing that it's 20% more.
Yeah.
Because of things that they hadn't foreseen.
Yeah.
Or whatever they had calculated. So ethanol over there is coming from corn, which is not as efficient as what we're using here, which is primarily sugarcane.
Yeah.
But both these things, the growth of both these crops are government backed.
Yeah, and in fact, there is a theory that ethanol can be made from other biomass waste. Okay, this is a theory. In practice, they will basically gravitate towards where the commercial solutions are easiest to access. And in India's case, that will become sugarcane. And in some parts of the country, it might become corn, depending on the weather availability, etc., etc. So I don't think any dramatic new stuff has happened that suddenly makes ethanol more relevant to India than it is anywhere else. Okay, the often quoted example is Brazil. And the reason why they quote Brazil is because Brazil has been doing ethanol blended fuels for the longest time, as far as I can tell, on earth.
Ages.
Even in Brazil today, you get 100% petrol and you get all the way to 100% ethanol, so that the citizenry has a choice about which fuel they'd like to use depending on the age of the vehicle, preferences, etc., etc. What is unclear so far about ethanol, which is really bugging me now, is that even today, there doesn't seem to be a response from the government about how will they deal with older vehicles. If you read the original study, the government was very clear about the pros of ethanol.
Correct.
They were also very clear about the cons of ethanol. But SIAM had asked them a question. How are you going to deal with older vehicles? Because there's a date in there, okay, 2007 or 8 or something, from which point onwards, vehicles can run ethanol. Some of the compatibilities are built in, it won't be a crisis. But the vehicles older than that, there will be a compatibility crisis. And there's no clear answer to what will happen. And the SIAM note actually says, small engines, especially two-wheelers, they may not actually be convertible to E20 in any meaningful form. And what that means is they'll run badly, they will fail to start, and they will have mechanical issues. There's no response to how to fix that yet.
The multiplicity of fuels is important.
Yep.
So just because we move to, let's say, flex fuels, which is whatever, we go to E85 or E100, doesn't mean that we do away with petrol.
You can't.
You still have to support vehicles that are running on that. Because tomorrow, and this is this conversation effectively, I remember even back in CNBC days, Renuka and I were talking about this back then. She said, what do you think about this? I said, the way I look at it, we need all of them. Because the day, if we say as humanity, today we drop, let's forget that there was diesel. There was just petrol.
Correct.
If we were to switch to any other fuel, immediately
it'll be the same problem.
It'll be scarcity again, and some other ecosystem will get ruined because of 100%. It. So if we were to go to 100% ethanol, let's say from tomorrow, that means the sugarcane industry, anything, that entire system is going to get stressed and overloaded.
Yeah.
So we need multiplicity
of
fuel
fuel sources.
sources.
There's the other side, no, Kartik. If everybody decides to go to sugarcane because we need ethanol, you're still going to need rice and wheat and other produce, because we also continue to eat. It's not like just because you have ethanol in the system, you have stopped eating.
And one of the things that about sugarcane that has been highlighted as well is that sugarcane is water intensive.
Yep.
And given everything, that becomes a harder sell going forward, because that is we're getting more drought related issues as well in farming as well.
Correct.
So that is a challenge in itself. So it's a complex thing. The one thing that I've really liked actually in the recent past, and I didn't realize that this term was becoming more common, CBG.
Okay.
Compressed biogas. So it's just like CNG, except
they're coming from biomass instead.
So there was a very nice...
So it basically rides slower, but it's gober.
Okay. Yeah.
No, because CNG is slower. I mean, there's no getting away from that.
In that there was a very nice, because see, in all of these systems we're going out to create some form of energy.
Hmm.
So even if you look at hydrogen, for instance,
Hmm.
hydrogen, the entire argument is hydrogen efficient? It
Hmm.
depends on whether you've used green energy
Hmm.
to first make hydrogen.
Correct.
Otherwise hydrogen is only some 30-40%
It's
or so.
about as efficient or less than ICEs today, petrol and diesel ICEs today. Yeah.
Because then there's the transportation of hydrogen,
Yeah.
etc., all of that jazz.
Hmm.
But CNG or CBG in this case
Hmm.
is awesome because every city is creating waste.
Correct.
And that waste is being dumped, processed, raw, whatever it may be, depending on what facilities are there. So there's a very nice example of Indore.
Hmm.
So in Indore, they've set up a plant
Hmm.
where it takes the waste from the municipality.
Hmm.
The plant processes that.
Hmm.
It then takes that CBG and gives it back to the municipality, and it runs their transport buses on that.
Hmm.
They also use, half of it goes there, half of it they sell to somewhere else, or something like that. There's an agency which then handles all the CBG. So it was like such a cool thing.
Hmm.
Is it simple? No, but it's a localized system that can be used and immediately feed into a local system. So you're reducing all the issues of transportation
Yeah,
and
but Kartik,
handling.
when I read about new energy sources, I never see the conversation about scalability being as important as it needs to be in the discussion, So, for example, how do you scale CBG where it takes over a large part of our energy requirement is an answer that is very difficult. Because as you said, it was designed as a localized system, and some part of it is a captive system where it goes into a closed system again. So, similarly, if Best in Mumbai were to decide that we will convert our entire bus fleet to electric, it's very easy to do because Best has large depots. It's a known number of buses. They go on known routes, etc., etc. The calculation of what charging infrastructure is required, what kind of buses to order, is relatively speaking a simple thing. But if in the same breath, the BMC were to tell that all bus operators in Mumbai must have electric buses and we will not run ICE buses in Mumbai, suddenly the situation becomes a heck of a lot more complex because the bus is a very good way to convert something to electric because it's a large vehicle. You can put a lot of battery power in it and it does not fundamentally change the operation of this vehicle. But now imagine if every bus out there had to be converted to uh, electric. You'll now have to say, what's the timeline for this? Because now it's a distributed system. Okay, if you own 10 buses and I own 20 buses, our conversion to electric is not the same transaction. Even if all the maths is in the favor of converting to electric, it's not same. What if you have money and I don't have money? I just can't afford to convert to electric yet.
No, which is why I'm saying the multiplicity is important.
Yeah.
Because the solutions who can apply what will vary. So they're applying, it's nice to see that logic is being applied where it works.
Yeah.
And it's in these kind of setups that EVs, I think, make a lot of sense because, and we've always said this, EVs will make sense when you are using it all the time. When you max out the usage of EVs is when you get the max return on investment because you're spending so much on the batteries in the first place.
Correct.
So buses in this instance, fantastic. Will it make sense for trucks where as it is they're carrying very heavy loads for that size? It won't make as much sense because you need that much more power, that much more energy to work with that. So that's a great example.
That was the brochure. Would you like to see the real product? For that, you have to head to the MotorInc channel, hit subscribe, and then watch the videos there.